What's happening, Advisor Nation? James McCracken in the house, and today I'm totally pumped to bring you our feature guest, Nathanial Bibby. Nathanial is a leading digital marketing strategist, LinkedIn coach, and social media speaker. He's a managing director of Bibby Consulting Group, LinkedIn Insider, and the founding trainer at the Australian Digital Marketing Institute. With over 12 years of digital marketing experience, Nathanial is a disruptive marketer that's evolved with the industry, stayed ahead of the curve, and is always looking to have a point of difference over his others. During his career, he's helped over 3,000 businesses throughout Australia and Southeast Asia gain a competitive advantage through effective business growth strategies. Nathanial, welcome to the podcast. You ready to have some fun?
I certainly am, James. How you doing? What an introduction.
Mate, thank you very much. Just reading some awesome words on the paper there, but totally pumped, mate. I think we've already got it. Well, I think we do have a bit of a relationship, and that's why I thought to introduce you into this podcast, because I think you've got a really, really interesting story that'll resonate with our guests.
Right on.
So,
sounds good,
mate. If you wouldn't mind sharing, please. I've given Advisor Nation a bit of an overview of who you are, a little insight into your business. If you wouldn't mind expanding upon that, giving us a bit more insight, and also tell us who you are when you're not at work.
Sure, okay. Well, I'm a disruptive marketer, as you said, and I guess what that means to me is I've always tried to do what other people are not, and I found that that's always served me quite well throughout my career. And when I started out in my childhood, actually, my dad was a financial advisor, and he grew a business quite successfully up in Hong Kong. And the downside of that was he caught about 75 flights a year. We didn't get to see a whole lot of him. Me and my sister went to boarding school when I was 10. And it was really just networking. He was out entertaining clients, and he was traveling around the world quite a lot. Whereas these days, it's so cool that we can do it all on social media. So one of the big reasons I do what I do is to help families become closer together and leverage the internet.
Oh, why wouldn't you? And having some personal experience of perhaps that challenge as you were growing up, and really bridging a divide there for other people to get the benefit of the technology that's available to us.
That's correct. And so I started out as a salesperson. And when you're in Thailand selling real estate to foreigners, and there's no buyers coming past the sales room or anyone coming to look at property, the only way that you can actually be successful is to get really good at lead generation, and you have to do it online because the buyers aren't there. So this is 10, 12 years ago now, and I was learning about search engine optimization, and within a matter of months, we could actually get a website to the top of Google and get 10 leads a day, whereas before they were only getting one or, 2 every month. So that was pretty cool. But later on, when I moved to Hong Kong, I got recruited by a real estate agency there. I found that SEO was no longer effective, which was like a huge learning curve for me, because I always thought that this is what I was good at, this is what I was going to do, and all of a sudden it didn't work, and I had to change and evolve with the time. And now it's just, I realize that after doing this for 12, 13 years, that the only thing constant is really that change, and marketing is always evolving.
There's no doubt about it. Change and evolve. I actually wrote the words down because they've resonated with me. And certainly in the marketing space, you're absolutely right. There's always some new things that people can access in order to, as you just said, be disruptive and stay ahead of the curve. I'm just curious to explore one thing, because one of my mentors, she talked about this term called inductive thinking, and she related it very, very closely to disruptive thinking. And another way she said it is, when there's a pack of horses that are running at you, be the unicorn, because everybody's going to be looking at the unicorn. And I think what you're talking about is being that unicorn amongst a bunch of other marketers, so that people can see your value offering for its point of difference, and obviously create opportunity for yourself.
Absolutely. And I've modeled, I look up to some of the most successful entrepreneurs, just like anyone does. I guess Richard Branson and so on are the household names. But I'm fascinated by hip hop culture. I follow people like Jay-Z, and I wrote an article on LinkedIn recently about the similarities between Jay-Z's philosophy on business and how similar it is to Warren Buffett's. And one of the things that they both do, which I noticed that a lot of entrepreneurs do, that always seem to back and be, is when going get stuff they just don't give up. They don't listen to all of the naysayers around them. They're confident in who they are and their instincts, and they just stay the course. I think that's really quite rare in this world, and fortunately, like when you've been through a few ups and downs, you learn to trust your instincts, and I think it stood me in good stead today.
No doubt it has. Now, our connection or our audio went dodgy there for a couple of seconds, but just for the benefit of our listeners, one of the key messages you were saying then is, from whether you're Jay-Z, whether you're Warren Buffett, or whether you're Nathanial Bibby, is that you don't listen to the naysayers and you go out there and create opportunities for yourself in spite of what other people might think or do.
Yeah, that's right. Warren Buffett says, that if you have an IQ of 160 in the stock market game, always give away 30 points to somebody else, because you don't need it in investments. What he believes you need is emotional stability, and to be able to just look at the facts and stay the course, even when everything seems to be burning around you. And that's why Warren Buffett's often buying when other people are selling, and so on.
Nice. In fact, I think you might have almost sort of touched on our next point around an expert guest from our tip. Now, just very, very quickly, who are you when you're not at work? What's going on for you? What does life look like?
Sure. Look, I'm at a stage now where I'm building my family. I've spent a lot of time doing personal development stuff. I'm a big Tony Robbins fanatic. So I'm always growing. I love the beach. I love sports, and I love hip hop, which a lot of people find quite peculiar, given I'm walking around in a suit in the day, but then I could be pumping some of the latest beats from Brooklyn in the evening.
Mate, I hear you loud and clear. I remember a few years ago I was listening to Eminem, "Lose Yourself." I had it pumped up in the car, and here's this me. As least likely a person as you'd ever expect to be listening to something like that, and suffice to say, I copped it from a guy at work who is an American that you would expect to listen to it. He couldn't believe it, so why not, mate? Get out there and have a bit of fun, I say.
Absolutely.
So I will expand upon this next question, which is around the expert tip. Now, you've already shared, of course, some of the thinking around emotional stability from Warren Buffett. Maybe if you could give us a different expert tip that you've learned that's contributed to your success and the growth that you've experienced.
Well, I think that a big one is to do what you love. A lot of people do get caught into businesses because they think that they're going to make a lot of money, or there's this huge upside and it's a massive opportunity. But if you don't really enjoy it and you're not skipping to work every day, then I feel like it's a bit like Steve Jobs touched on. I think he said that if you it's pretty hard to do exceptional work if you don't love what you do. So I think that you should find out what your passion is first, and then find a way to make a successful business out of it, because there's opportunities everywhere. You may as well do them, focus on things that you really enjoy to do.
I hear you. A few years ago when I was working at Yellow Pages, I had we had a presenter come to us. It was, I think it was Adam Elliott. He won an Oscar quite a few years ago for his one of the projects that he worked on. It was I'm trying to think of the name of the project. It was like molding. I'm lost on the other name, but what he said in that moment was, "Look, I'm never working a day in my life," because I remember he was offered shortly after he won the Oscar. Disneyland came to him and offered him insane amounts of money. We're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars. And he said, "No, I'm knocking that back because I'm not passionate about that project. What I'm passionate about is doing something back in Melbourne that was more aligned to who he was as a person." And I remember at the end of that day, at the end of that presentation, one of the people from our office, he just got up and handed in his resignation, because he's like, "You know what? I'm not passionate about this, but I am passionate about pursuing something else." So I think it sort of speaks volumes to what you're talking about.
Yeah, and there was this quote, you reminded me of a quote from Richard Branson, which I saw recently, that said, if you're not changing people's lives, you shouldn't be in business. And I thought that was awesome, because I see so many people just copying what everyone else is doing, but just trying to be a bit more efficient. But unless you're focused on, adding exceptional value to your customers, I think that it's always going to be a means to an end. But not only that, it's a lot more fun to do something that gives back and contributes to the to the greater community.
Fair call. Yeah, give back, contribute. Yeah, big words. Hey, I've just looked it up as well. Clayography is what Adam Elliott does, and the name of the movie, of course, I was trying to think of, it's called Harvey Crumpet, which I'm sure a number of our listeners have listened to, or seen, I should say.
Cool.
So let's explore a different perspective on what you do, Nathaniel. Let's just say someone comes up and, they're new, that you've never met them before, and it's at a networking event, and they introduce themselves and they say, hey, what is it that you do? What sort of response would you give to them in 10 seconds?
Sure. The way I word it is we help businesses with integrity add more value to their clients. So it used to be we used to help businesses of integrity get more customers, but I believe in the quality of those customers can actually be a lot more powerful than the quantity these days, particularly with tools like LinkedIn out there where you can actually specialize in a very, very targeted niche, especially if you're in business to business, and the results are actually better because it's pretty self-explanatory, but 10 years ago, if you were a vegan bodybuilder in Tasmania, there's very little chance you could build a successful business, whereas these days, that's exactly what would work.
There you go. So all of the vegans down in Tasmania who are wanting to be bodybuilders, go hard, I say. Go hard. Or at least get in contact with Nathaniel. But point taken, though, and it's probably worth repeating that because the business is with integrity. So what do you mean by integrity?
I think businesses that are focused on adding value and not about what can I get. It's more so about getting their service in front of people and doing it in a way which is really in line with social selling, because I didn't even mention this, but we are focused on LinkedIn at the moment. The reason that I don't mention it is because I know in a few years' time it may be something else, but at the moment LinkedIn is where we're getting the most optimal results, and social selling is a whole different way of selling, and the old method of selling is very much, what can I get, how can I wrestle this guy into the ground to make him sign the contract, whether it's a good product or not, whereas on social media it's actually the businesses with integrity that are thriving, because you've got all this social proof, recommendations, endorsements, and you only really get anywhere when you're prepared to give a little bit up front without expecting anything in return. And that's when you start to build a reputation as an industry leader and as an authority, a thought leader, and all those kind of lovely long words that people like to throw around.
Yeah, nicely said. With the interview I just did earlier interview with Lindsay Adams, he talked about this concept of stop selling and start partnering, and that's very much what you're talking about insofar as adding value, contributing to them, thinking about them before yourself, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah, your customers can be the best marketing tool that you have.
Yeah, spot on. There's no two ways about it. So let's go with a different perspective here, because you've shared a little bit about your journey insofar as, back in the days of real estate in Thailand, which I imagine would have been interesting, and then transitioning through to Hong Kong. So how did you go into those industries, and then how did you start up a consulting practice like you've done?
Sure. Well, it's interesting, actually. Excuse me. I came back to help a friend of mine expand from Perth to Melbourne with a digital marketing agency, and I was doing digital marketing, but specifically in real estate. And so I said to him, well, what's the best customers? What are the most high-paying clients? Which ones can we add the most value to? And he said, you want to go after surgeons and dentists. They pay the most, they need us the most, etc., etc. So here I am coming back to Melbourne after living in Asia. And I actually tried going around to all the different surgery practices and getting knocked back by their assistants. Every now and then, I would catch a glimpse of the doctor and yell out to him or something like that. But it was pretty much an ineffective way, going door to door. Telephone was just useless. So I came across this LinkedIn tool, which is, was relatively new back then. And I decided to message 10 surgeons. And keep in mind, surgeons don't spend a lot of time on the computer. 4 of them out of the 10 that I contacted had responded and ended up actually making a sale to one of them. It was a large sale. I think it was a $20,000 website or something. This is my first sale in the digital marketing world, and everyone's patting me on the back saying that was a great job. So I thought, okay, well, LinkedIn's a viable way for me to generate leads. So I was growing the business. Melbourne quickly became a bigger office than the WA one, and I had to systemize what I'd learned on which was pretty basic back then, and delegated it to an assistant. And during that process, I realised I could actually teach other people how to do it as well. And then, cut a long story short, I actually got in a position where I was made redundant, and I was actually like behind on my rent. I was in quite a bit of debt at the time, and it was one of those situations where I couldn't really go get a job. I'm a salesperson. Like, I kind of need to make a lot of money quite quickly. And so it was more of a must to me. I actually had to go out and start my own business. And when I started, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was doing everything to do with digital marketing, trying to find my feet. And then I think it was a seminar that I sponsored with a chap called David Guest, a business coach here in Melbourne. And I said to David before the event, I said, rather than saying I'm an online marketing specialist, why don't you just say that I help people get more customers on LinkedIn? And after the event, I actually got just swamped by people wanting to know more about how you can use LinkedIn effectively. And David came up to me, I remember this very clearly, and he whispered in my ear, he said, mate, the market's telling you what it wants. So I decided at that point to specialize in LinkedIn marketing exclusively. And since then, we've really, grown quite quickly, and I've learned so much about what you can do on LinkedIn and how effective it is. And funny thing is, when you teach these courses, even though you get positive feedback and the content is very effective, because of the time implications, a lot of people actually don't implement what you teach them. So maybe 5 or 10% are actually using the strategies that they learn. So we've actually started running lead generation campaigns for businesses, and the profile of the people that we're working with has changed dramatically. We're now working with the likes of BT Financial Group and Western Union, and just these multinational organisations, because there really is not much competition in the way of outsourced lead generation services, social media these days.
Oh, perfect. And going back to one of the points you just shared, Nathaniel, around that transition, it was, as you said, the marketplace is giving you the feedback around what it is that they're wanting, and be the person that fills that gap, as opposed to trying to perhaps be the next version of somebody else.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to have a crack. Like a lot of people are scared that they're going to, lose everything, the imaginary tightrope, as it may. Normally, I find that I think that normally if you jump, you find a way to land, or you really have to just sort of take some risks in business, especially while you're young. The last thing you want to do is do it when you've got a wife and 3 children. I'm very fortunate that I've been able to do this while I'm young, and it's worked out really well. And you start to learn more about how to calculate risks better, and you learn that even though there may not be the ultimate business niche there right now, that it could lead to something that you don't know about right now. So that's been an invaluable lesson as well.
Yeah, nicely said. I remember one of my mentors used to tell me that you're never ever going to find out your niche sitting at the couch at home trying to work it out in front of TV. In other words, get out there and do things and help enough people, and then you'll find out where you should best spend your time. I think it's also important for people listening to this Advisor Nation, Nathaniel, to really appreciate that concept of backing yourself as well, because one of the things that I've seen with people that have gone the distance or gone the journey is that they do back themselves. And that's not to say they don't have challenges. It's not to say they don't have mistakes or, even question sometimes whether they're doing the right thing, but they still back themselves anyway and have a red hot go, which is, what you were saying is have a crack.
Yeah, I can guarantee you that if you go out on your own and business doesn't take off immediately, that you have a lot of people telling you "I told you so" and that you can't do it. It can be quite overwhelming, but I'd encourage you to go onto YouTube, look at the people that have done it, listen to what their experience was like, and you'll find that they all went through the same thing, and you're not alone. Yeah,
absolutely. Or go on to this channel and hear exactly the same thing.
Absolutely.
Hey, so let's talk about this. How's your business or purpose for being in business changed over the years? So from the time when you started to where you are right now, and obviously having a different perspective around what you're able to do and the value you're able to add. I'm wondering how, if at all, has your perspective on things changed?
Sure. I've learned that what the clients value might not be as obvious as what it may seem. you're in the lead generation business, you think that people just want leads and that's it. And it's really a lot more to it than that. So our clients are really do value on our integrity, our honest advice, and we work with a lot of business partners that we recommend to various clients. And our reputation is something I'm extremely proud about, but it does mean that we have to be quite picky with who we work with, because you can imagine that if you've got systems in place to make sure that a lead generation campaign is effective, that the client's also going to have to follow some steps and processes to make that happen. And if the client's expecting the leads to jump out of the computer and throw their credit cards on the floor, and and they're not going to have to actually be part of this exercise, then they're not really the best fit for us. And I'm sure that there's plenty of online marketing agencies that would take their business, but we really enjoy working with clients that get results. And the only way that we can actually achieve that is when we work together as a team, rather than us just being the reason why the sales team's not making their targets.
Okay, so one of the key things I'm hearing out of that is setting and managing expectations up front with clients. The better we set that environment, or set those standards and expectations that we can have of each other, what you want out of your client and what they can expect out of you, the easier it is to be able to build a good quality relationship off that, as opposed to perhaps coming at things from a different angle. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that the clients really need to think about what it is that their outcome is, and sure, it's all very well to say that they want a whole ton of sales, but there's certain things that are within our control, certain things are within their control, and it's important that you measure each part of the process so that you can actually isolate problem areas and solve them very, very quickly. The coolest thing about digital marketing is you can measure absolutely everything. I mean, where else in the world can you know exactly what somebody typed in to find, a certain page on your website, and call the number and record the conversation and all that sort of stuff that you could do on the internet, and then follow them around with cookies? I mean, it's absolutely astronomical. But unless you know what to measure, it's all a bit boring. Most larger businesses have a good grasp on this, but it's the small to medium-sized businesses which really need to focus on, just educating themselves on what the metric to be looking at.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. That is always it's almost the changing target as well in terms of that education process. Let's take a different angle again in terms of this conversation. So you've obviously shared some of the aspects of what brought you to be where you are. You've given us a bit of a taste of the journey that you've been on. Would you mind now taking us to a moment in this journey around a real low point, or maybe even the worst point in business that you've experienced, a point where you thought maybe you'd failed, or thought maybe you'd pack it up, or that you were disappointed or disheartened? Paint the picture for us around what was going on for you, and what, if anything, did you learn from that experience?
Sure. Yeah. No, I've actually I've had a couple of those experiences, and you learn a lot when when your back's against the wall like that, because the biggest mistake that I made in my first year in business was I grew too quickly. And, I took on quite a lot of people very quickly. And I really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it from the, connection and contribution side of things. And we did exceptionally well, but the team is always only as good as its leader. And to be honest, growing at that pace is very hard to maintain a certain degree of leadership when you haven't actually done it before. So what I feel like I learned from doing that, and it did actually drive us to a point where all of a sudden there's no cash in the bank, and that really makes you learn things quickly. And you think to yourself, well, what do I do? Do I fire my employees? And I made the decision not to, and I worked my ass off, and we got sales and revenue in the door, which I feel very proud about, because if I'm going to ask an employee to move on, I want it to be because of the reasons that that are I guess are outlined at the beginning, not because of financial reasons. And so once you overcome things like that, you start to look at your business completely differently, and look at areas where you can improve stability and efficiency, and things like accounting systems and project management systems and automation tools may seem like just a bit of a unnecessary evil when you're in a small business. But when the going gets tough, those things really work for you. And now I actually only have one full-time staff and two virtual assistants working for me, whereas before I had as many as 9 people. So the software that we have, the tools, the automation, all that kind of stuff has actually replaced 4 or 5 people, which has been a key learning.
It's interesting you say that. Another gentleman I know talks about exactly the same thing, that putting a bunch of good quality technology in his business has provided a significant functionality and cost efficiencies that he wasn't able to achieve through having a lot more team members on board. So, in fact, an investment in software saved his business hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of labour cost.
Absolutely. And it allows you to isolate different areas of your business. And the mentor that I work with, his name's Gilbert Francois, has been absolutely amazing in helping me do this. But is profit optimization, looking at where in your business you have the most profit or you're having the biggest impact, and then narrowing that down to what part of that process is the most profitable, and just making these small tweaks is invaluable to creating geometric growth. Because if you make all these 1% changes, before you know it, you've tripled your size of your business.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the other important lesson for our listeners, Nathaniel, is just to realise that concept of when you've gone from what you obviously were, which was a startup, and then you've gone into a very quick growth mode, and then you've got to a point of looking to scale, but you in essence didn't have the systems, the infrastructure, the foundations to support that in that initial stage, which is where you were probably very, very stretched, and if anything, I imagine very, very tired at a certain point as well.
Yeah, well, that's the school of hard knocks. You learn a lot quicker than you do at university, I can assure you.
Yeah, mate, I believe you, and the costly lessons too.
That's right.
So let's talk about another point in the journey that you've had. This time around, a moment when you realised that everything was going exactly as you wanted it to be. You're either getting feedback from the marketplace, you were getting some really good results, or maybe you share with us, what was a point where you noticed that it was well and truly on track?
Sure. Look, it's always the little things, James. Like when a client calls you up and they say, hey, I just want to say thank you. When we signed up with you, we really weren't sure if we were going to be able to stay in business longer than a few months, and you've completely transformed the business. We're now seeing 3 or 4 leads per day, and it's interesting. I was doing a talk a few weeks ago, and there was 150 odd people in the room, and it was like a small function, and I was feeling a bit run down. I wasn't feeling very well. Are they our target market? Well, they're not the businesses that will do these lead generation campaigns. And I thought to myself that I'm just going to focus on contributing and just to share my knowledge, to get as much of it out of my head into the audience, and I'm just going to enjoy it. And I'll tell you what, like the feedback that I got afterward, people coming up to me and thanking, and I stuck around, and we did a bit of a focus group for about 45 minutes. Really just made me feel really good about who we were, what we stood for, and the business. So things like that, I think, really make me feel like we're on the right track and we're making a difference.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for sharing that. It does make a difference when you get out there and you pay it forward because you can, not because you necessarily have a hidden agenda around it. I think that's a lot to be said for doing it, as you said, just because you've got this great, heaping amount of knowledge, which in and of itself is useful, but it's certainly a lot more useful when you're able to share it and support other people in terms of the results that they're aspiring to achieve.
As a general rule, James, because it's so hard to just pinpoint where the revenue is going to come from out of that, and I'm sure it would. I'm sure it'll come back through word of mouth and all that. But I think if you decide to do something, do it with everything that you've got. Add value to the person that you're in front of. You decide to meet somebody for 45 minutes. Give them as much value as you can at 45 minutes, and you may or may not decide to give them another 45 minutes. But if you decide to be present and give them, add value everywhere you go, and it'll come back to you in all sorts of different ways. And you just really don't know what's going to happen and who you're going to meet along the way, and it always serves you well. Yes,
this is very, very true. Goes back to, again, the message that our previous speaker, Lindsay, was talking about, or our previous guest, insofar as using your connections, building relationships, because you never know where they might go.
Absolutely.
So, Nathaniel, we're going to enter the PD round, which is where you get to share nuggets of wisdom to pay forward to our listeners. Now, you've already shared a few, but we're going to go a little bit deeper again. So, you ready to do this?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Magnificent. So, if you could please share, what's one thing that you've done to earn the trust, respect, and advocacy of your clients and other people in your network?
Well, I guess. We guarantee a minimum number of leads when we run our campaigns. Now, technically, I find that a bit of a challenge because I feel like we've got our own internal processes and systems, and we do all these different things. But at the end of the day, a business has so many different things that will contribute towards whether or not somebody will respond to some marketing. But I've decided that we have a good enough judge of who our clients are to put our name behind that. And on occasion, we've had to put in more resources to achieve that guarantee. But I think that our clients respect the fact that we're there to deliver results, not to get 25 likes on Facebook page, which at the end of the day, they're not really sure whether that's actually helping their business. We're there to generate leads, for them to get more customers and close business. And if the return on investment isn't being measured at their end, it certainly will be at our end, so we can demonstrate that we're adding value to their business.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for sharing. What's one piece of technology, like an app or otherwise, that you swear by?
Yeah. Oh, sure. There's a small social media site called LinkedIn, which I couldn't live without. So that's definitely one. I can't stress how important LinkedIn is to building your networks and leveraging off what you do online. In addition to LinkedIn, there's look, I love Google Apps, and we use actually a number of different apps and tool recently called Zapier. And Zapier basically can make any app talk to any other app.
Yep.
And it's an excellent way to waste a whole bunch of time if you do spend too much time on it. But look, there's different things that you can do to automate your business. So, for example, like if you've got a sales pipeline, we use a one called Pipe Drive, I think it is. And when you close a deal into a new client, it automatically then creates a new project in our pro workflow. It sends out a welcome email automatically. All these kind of things are all possible through this tool called Zapier. So that might be a good recommendation for the listeners.
Yeah, nicely said. I've just come across it in the last couple of weeks. So I think what you say is you're going to zap one thing to another thing. That's
right.
The cool term that they talk about at the moment.
Yeah, I have to have these cool terms when I choose my apps.
Yeah, there you go. So just go around and talk about zapping things. There you go. So we'll certainly put that one in the show notes. What's one thing that you're excited about in your business right now?
We are excited about the innovation that's going on behind the scenes. A lot of things that I dreamt about when I started the business in terms of automation and what you can do in terms of scheduling posts and even running like drip campaigns where you're messaging your prospects sequentially. Just like an email marketing campaign through social media, are all starting to come into fruition, which I'm extremely excited about. And I think that the future of social media marketing is only just beginning. And once it's a bit like when email marketing started, and you could send an email to 100 people, and you'd think that you're getting a personalized email because the name would be at the top. Of course, everyone knows that you can automate that kind of thing now, and no one really takes much notice of your emails. But on social media, there's a whole different ball game there that's barely, the surface has barely even been scratched on what you can actually achieve. And okay, it may seem a little bit impersonal to automate a message to 100 prospects, but if they're all in the exact same demographic and they all fit 5 or 6 different criteria of your target audience, then at the end of the day, it is a personalized message. You're just leveraging through technology.
Agreed. Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. So what's the best business book that you've read in the last 6 months?
Without question, it would be one that Gilbert, my business mentor, gave to me to read, and it's called The One Thing. The author is Gary Keller, and essentially the moral of the book is to be successful in business really pays to focus on one thing. And people like Bill Gates follow this system. And essentially, like in the morning, if you write your to-do list, and there might be 15 or 20 items on there, and you may even prioritize them on all that, put a big line through it, turn the page over, and just write one thing. And a very interesting thing happens, I noticed, and that is that you actually do it, and you do it really well. And normally the people that... normally the most important thing is something that the business owner will be very good at. And unfortunately, that means they get through it really quickly so they can move on to all the other stuff that they're not good at. Whereas if you focus on what you're uniquely good at and specialize in that, the other stuff will take care of itself in one way or another. So I find that that book's completely changed my approach to business. My stress levels have gone right through the floor, and we've been a lot more effective.
Well, there you go. It's a win-win all-rounder. So I'll just repeat the name of that. It's called The One Thing by Carrie Keller. I like it. Now, our last question. It's an absolute cracker for you. So I'm just wondering, if you didn't know anyone, you didn't have your business, your clients, or your network, but you had your experience and your knowledge and a smartphone and $1,500, what would you do in the next 7 days to get started?
That is a very good question. In the same business?
Presumably, but I'll let you think about that as you will. You've got your knowledge, you've got your experience. So,
okay. Well, the first thing that I think you need to do when you're brainstorming on what your goals are and what your business plans are is you need to get yourself in a peak state, as Tony Robbins would call it. So you need to get yourself in a zone where you feel like anything is possible. You're not being held back by stories, by what other people have told you. And sometimes that can be as simple as jumping in the ocean. It can be jumping out of an aeroplane. It can be going for a bike ride. For some people, it's just going for a walk. But I think you have to get yourself out of your comfort zone and start being a bit creative, and things will start to come. The worst thing you can do is sit at your desk in front of the computer and hope that your spreadsheet's going to come up with a solution.
Yeah, fair point. So for you, it's about getting yourself in the peak state. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay, cool. What are you going to do? Are you going to jump in the ocean or jump out of a plane?
Well, I jumped out of a plane a couple of months ago, and that was pretty awesome. I think I could I felt like I could probably do anything after that, because my fear of heights is just absolutely it's a serious fear. That's a serious fear. So I think that I'd have to do something different, and maybe like race sports cars on ice. I think you can do that in the North Pole or something like that. Would definitely do the trick as well.
Oh, there you go. I like it. That's a bit different, a little bit of abstract thinking there. So, if you could please tell our listeners how they can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Sure. LinkedIn. So my name's Nathanial Bibby. You can find me on LinkedIn, and my company is Bibby Consulting Group. Feel free to get in touch. I always accept connection requests from business professionals in Australia. So if you're tuning in and like to connect, by all means, reach out.
Fantastic. And we'll put that URL in the show notes. So that's bibbyconsultinggroup.com.au. Is that right?
That's the one. Thank you.
Magnificent. So, Advisor Nation, we know that you're the sum total of the people that you hang out with most. And today you've been hanging out with Nathanial and James. So, on behalf of Advisor Nation, Nathanial, thank you so much for your time and your contribution. We wish you well, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Thanks very much, James. Pleasure to be here.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to another episode of Journey of the Successful Advisor. Be sure to visit thesuccessfuladvisor.com so you can access a range of free ebooks, resources and programs to fuel your journey.